Welcome to Fulfilling This Belly Sting. A show dedicated to aligning a journey to a better Norse. Join us each weekday morning at 7 a.m. Alaska time. Someone's little girl, daughter, sister, girlfriend, fiance, wife, cousin, mother, auntie, grandmother, great grandmother, elder, disappears, shattering, a family, a community, the world. There is something we can all do. Remember them. Like that.
God Morgan, and happy Tears Day to you. Today we embrace the Norse god Tyr for his courage and his role model of being a gift to our understanding of who we really are. Before we get started, as always, I want to say thank you to all of you who have liked, followed, and subscribed us on all of the platforms that we're available on. And if you haven't had an opportunity, I ask that you please take a moment, subscribe us on any of the channels that we broadcast on, whether it be our audio platforms or whether it be our video platforms. I also want to give a huge shout out to my friends and family at New Reality TV. Newrealitytv.com is an online streaming channel where you can witness a plethora of perspectives within our physical journey that will hopefully resonate with you to give you a better mental space. As we know, our spiritual and our physical, which includes our mental, are all connected in a balance. So be sure to take a moment and check them out. You can like, follow, subscribe to us there as well. If you do happen to find yourself with a few extra coins, looking to put them to good use, by all means, stop by our tip jars and drop those in there. Know that we will use it to the best of our ability to further distribute this message far and wide, that those who may need to hear it can hear it. For those of you who may be interested in learning more about me, my shows, my teachings, and all of the things about me, including our life coaching services, which we offer to anyone who feels they need them, is all available at norsewhispers.com, where you can also check out the coaching page, which is /coaching. So plenty of information there for you to absorb and hopefully help you to find a path, a direction that you may need moving forward. Today we're embracing the courage of Tyr, and we're looking past our perceived failures. Sometimes in our lives we will make decisions, we will engage in what we perceive as opportunities, only to find that they didn't pan out, if you will, the way we were intending. And we consider, we then take that as a loss and may internalize it as a mistake or bad things. And I want us to look past that. Instead of saying, yes, you know, I'm a horrible person because I did this horrible thing. Yes, you may have done things that were not beneficial to you. But if, we didn't violate anyone else's aura, anyone else's circle, we're simply beating ourselves up for no apparent reason, no reason, because we've learned from that. One of the things that I learned fairly early in my shamanic path is to get to this place over here. We had to go through all of these places from here to here to here to here to here to here to here. Had one of those places, one of those dots along the trail, been changed, been altered, been different, right? We would have wound up in a very different place. Maybe good, maybe not as good as we'd hoped. Whatever the case, all of these dots align to get us to where we are today. They're all required steps. Some of these steps that we've taken, we may perceive them now as not needed. One of the things that I'm constantly asked about and questioned for is I grew up in an era very different than today. And in my day, one could construe parenting, some of the methodology, particularly of some parents, was more abusive. And I was a younger person. Didn't believe in having, stern speeches. He wasn't a man of many words, and instead chose the path that his father had taken, and that was a path of violence. My father often struck us. Did it in public. Didn't seem to bother him wherever he was, and he would just smack whatever, if it was a punishment for something, and in a more private setting, the hands then curled into more of an anger statement, and he would hit us with closed fists. Now, many people look at this experience and say, "Oh, you were so abused." I disagree. I was not abused by the standards of that day, by the time frame, by placing then the context of a community around these events. It wasn't so out of place. It wasn't so frowned upon. It wasn't so horrible. Now, as I came to be a father many, many years later, that mode, that decision didn't play as much of a commanding presence. So I didn't use that scenario. I didn't use that to discipline our children, to discipline my sons and daughter. I used the word. I used maybe some emotional manipulation, but it wasn't physically painful. When I look back on my father's treatment of myself and my brother, I'm reminded, when we put the context into the scenario, in my mind, it wasn't abnormal. It wasn't violent. It wasn't such a big thing. Again, had my father been different, I would have been very different. I may never have discovered the rest of my spirituality. I may have stayed. My father was an atheist. He didn't believe in that which he couldn't put his hands on, and which I find really, looking back on it, it produces a very different kind of thought process as to why. But again, putting context where context belongs, it was the world he grew up in. It was his generational energy that was being passed and influencing his decisions as to how he was going to live. And we can look back on it and say, "Oh, that's horrible. That's not right." But at the time, it was. One of the things we find very frequently in our existence is many of the decisions we will make along the way and our lifetime we will lead has a series of events that we may remember one way or another. But then reflecting back on it, using today's, where we are today, and we reflect back, we may look at it very differently than what we looked at it, how we saw it happening during the event. This is very frequent, as we know our thought processes, as we're experiencing the world now, coming down into the heart, expanding the energy, we have a piece of this imagination that's coming forward and coming in with this new content, with this new experience. So we have some memories that are applying, and then they're going to go through the emotional filters behind our sensory input in much the same way, but in a more supportive role of the experience we're having. So in other words, if we were to see something that reminded us particularly of maybe a past memory, part of this sensory input now includes this memory from the past, right? So it's going to feed into and provide some level of energy, right? So biochemistry created by the heart is going to now include this past memory. So as an example, if we were to visit, and I'm speaking generally, but if we were to visit today our elementary school, our primary school, and I were to walk into the halls today, obviously I'm a lot taller than I was when I was in primary school, and I will see the primary school very differently. All remodels and rebuilds and aside, I'll see it very differently. My memories will come forward of the times I was there. I remember, while I don't remember the actual school and the actual series of things, I do remember being content and happy and peaceful, if you will. So those memories will be added to now what I'm seeing now, my experiences of the moment, right? So I'm walking down the hallways of this school, this primary school. Obviously, my perspective will be very different. I'll be looking at things a little bit higher up, as an example. But more importantly, my current emotional state will now contend with my previous emotional state. I can let this experience that I'm now receiving of touring my primary school, I can let the emotion of yesteryear, of being content, of being happy, of being cheerful, or I may find that my emotional state today, emotionally today, is now going to set the overall mood or mode, right? So I really have a choice. I can remember the good times of primary school, or I can choose to absorb my current energy, whatever that is, right? So if I had struggles to get into the building, as an example, and everybody was being very nasty and very problematic, in my opinion, in my perception anyway, it may set my mood. And now the mood that I have today is going to contend with that memory, that experience that's going to come forward in my imagination. Imagination is roughly anywhere from about 10-15% to up to 60% of our sensory input. So it can take a lot, or it can take very little. But it's always going to add somewhat to our sensory input, our sensory input today, right? So imagination is a big part of what we take in, of what we absorb from our reality around us. It can be a pretty big portion of that. Many times we find, particularly in fearful situations, imagination is actually more of the perceived experience than we're actually experiencing. We could be walking down a dark corridor, and what's driving us, we could barely make things out along this corridor, but yet our imagination is probably going to push us even further into the fearful realm, because it's dark, it's unknown, oh no. And we may have past experiences that have taught us that dark hallways typically hold bad guys. May have seen enough horror movies to where now this is part of what we're experiencing. So our imagination is a big part of what we process through every experience. Remember, our presents are but snapshots in time. And each snapshot carries with it an emotional state. And our aura and our well of the self is going to, fluctuate based on what that emotional state is. Probably even more importantly is our emotional filters are also dependent on this resulting emotional state that our last experience had. So if we look at these snapshots, snapshot 1 creates an emotional state that affects the way we see snapshot 2, and so on and so forth. And so you can see how sometimes you may have these ups and downs based on what the emotional state was of the previous present. So it's very important that we understand our emotional states. And whether we decide to recognize it or not, our emotional state is what dictates, drives what we see, what we experience of our reality. Our emotional state, both in the present, this moment, the previous moment, and our past, all come together. Energy of what and our is in the moment. All right? So it's super important that we understand the influence of emotions on our experience of reality. I'm going to take a very quick, very short commercial break. When we come back, let's talk about how we can use the courage of Tyr to establish what we want to see, the reality that we want to experience. Okay? So let's take a real quick break, and when we come back, we'll talk about setting our reality.
In the air. The time is now.
We're all waking up.
We're waking up.
We're all waking up.
It's all shifting.
New vibrations.
It's you.
It's you.
It's me. It's all of us.
Together.
A new time.
A new day.
A new energy.
A new energy.
New reality.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
Awaken with us.
newrealitytv.com.
Welcome back, and thank you for taking that quick break. For those of you who haven't heard, New Reality TV is a wonderful collection of perspectives in our spiritual path. So check it out. I'm sure you'll find something that resonates with you to help you to obtain or maintain your mental space. We know that spirituality and our mental space is directly linked. Whether we choose to recognize either or not is irrelevant. What's relevant is the peace that we seek is when these two are in balance. So check them out, newrealitytv.com. You won't be disappointed. When we left, we were talking about Tyr and using his model of courage. Now, for some of you, you may not know who Tyr was. He may be this figure that you're unaware of, as he does not share the advertising, if you will, of the Marvel films. Tyr was the god of justice. Now, backing up before we really read about the legends and the gods of the Norse, before they became the Norse of fame and fortune, they were the Germanic tribes that were moving north through what is today Germany certainly into the Jutland of Denmark and beyond. So many of the beliefs that we understand from Denmark, of course, what is Denmark today, spanned out and became the understandings of Norway and Sweden and even further, certainly to the Icelandic lands. Anything pretty much associated with the Norse would have adopted many of these beliefs and understandings that come from the Germanic tribes moving north. My ancestry, of course, stems from a tribe of these Germanics, indigenous folks, referred to as Celts, and they would later become the tribe of the Danes. The Danes would then cross the Elbe River into the Jutland of Denmark to become the March of the Danes north. And this, of course, is a direct translation which comes to the word Denmark, which is the March of the Danes. So we see where many of the beliefs that the Norse would have carried, certainly the Danes of the age of Vikings, would have started in Germania. And in Germania, Tyr was known as the god of justice. Now, he served a much more centralized role of being more of a leader, but he was all about fair equality. And I'm going to caveat the word equality, but simply to say his calling was to administer understanding of balance, of justice, right? So Where we see Tyr really coming into the realm of Marvel films, if you will, is when Fenrir, of course, the giant wolf child of Loki, needed to be chained. And they tested many chains, and Fenrir was capable of breaking them all. Finally, they would have the dwarves forge. The dwarves made so many wonderful weapons and armor, and they were wonderful armorers and blacksmiths. And so the dwarves would forge a chain that was strong enough, they felt, to hold Fenrir. All the gods, of course, were concerned about Fenrir and his destructive abilities of the realms, and so they decided to put these chains on him to hold him. And Fenrir, of course, made the ultimatum that he would allow this chain to be put around his neck, assuming one of the gods would be willing to put his hand in his mouth. And Tyr simply stepped up. He embraced this power of courage, put his hand in Fenrir's mouth, of which Fenrir, as the story goes, would bite off his hand. But in the same time, they were able to get Fenrir chained with this chain forged by the dwarves, which would restrain him until Ragnarok, where he would come free again and create havoc, because that's what Fenrir does. Courage. Now, a lot of people say, well, courage is the absence of fear. Well, courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the management of fear. It is not the absence thereof. The absence of fear is referred to as foolhardy, because we are all have some form of fear. Fear of being ostracized, maybe. Fear of being hurt. Fear of being whatever. Fear of hurting another. Fear of becoming conquered. Whatever it is, most of us, 99.99999% of us, have some form of manifested fear within our minds. Sometimes it's fear that we don't hurt others. So the fear is always there. What is fear? Fear is uncertainty. It is what's going to happen. Am I going to be hurt? Am I going to hurt someone? What's going to happen? So fear simply is the uncertainty of the future. Many of us have this same, we express a fear of the future, and that, things won't go our way, or, things won't be as we planned. These are all manifestations of this emotion referred to as fear. Now, fear can be paralyzing. Fear can break down the brain and allow us, and essentially create so much energy within what my ancestors referred to as the sheath of truth, build up so much energy in there that we've lost the ability to have cognitive space. We just simply can't think our way through this. We can't do anything. And then, of course, depending on how much energy of this we're creating, it overflows, and we find ourselves having physical symptoms. This is where we begin to shut down, right? So we're beginning to protect ourselves. Sweaty palms, sweaty on the inside of the elbows, right? Anxiety attacks, panic attacks. All of these things are all physical or physiological symptoms of an overflow of energy within the sheath. Now, is there ways to do this? Absolutely, there are ways to get around it. One of the best ways I find when I'm afraid, or when fear enters into my processing, is I have affirmations. Affirmations are the best way you can do this, can manage this. By using affirmations day in, day out, to help us get to the next step, to replace, only a fraction, to replace our cognitive space and allow us to think this thing through. This allows us to push away the energy of fear and to actually recover and use our cognition now to kind of work our way through these processes. So today, as we think about Tyr and we think about the courage that he represented, Tyr represents an understanding of looking past the fear and the uncertainty to find ways to move forward. And affirmations, small affirmations written on cards, maybe they're tokens or totems, whatever it is. There are ways that you can kind of set yourself up for success to see your way through this fear. And that's the greatest tool that you have. So think about your affirmations when you find yourself being overwhelmed by something. What is it that's going to help you get back on where you want to be, right? Remembering joy, remembering love, remembering courage, remembering yesterday we spoke about the mental control of money. Think about these gods. Think about, even if you're a monotheist and you need to think about your God, whatever it takes, look at what it's going to take, write down and make visible the tools that you'll need to get through this fear or this overwhelming sadness, anger, even to some extent elation, celebration. Just maintain control because you are worth it. You are valuable. You present a different perspective of this reality that we call home, that we call life. And for those of us who out here who want to see your perspective, the ancestors certainly do. So I'm offering you a way forward. This way forward could mean just these small affirmations written in different places throughout your visible space that you can refer to, and you can actually reclaim your cognitive space. All right, my friends, today I want you to think of you because you are certainly worthy. Use today Tyr as our example to conquer those fears and to see who you really are, and to give yourself the benefit of the value that you present to this world, to this reality. All right? I want you to do that today for me. And then tomorrow, we'll talk about Othin and his quest, never-ending quest for wisdom. I hope that you will join me then. Until then, my friends, have a wonderful, blessed Tuesday, and we will see you again tomorrow. Love and light.
I'm watching for Felina's Belly Snake, a special production of Whispers of the Norse. Brought to you by the Alaska Ulfhefnar in South Central Alaska. Guidance and wisdom, courtesy of an ancient Celtic Norse shaman. Thank you so much for joining us today.